welcome back. It's great to be with you. 29th Phyllis Schlafly Collegians Summit. Our next guest, Jonathan, I didn't tell you this, but we get feedback from people that are on our at our collegians. I shouldn't tell this to Bridget because now she's going to want to see the data next year. But we had a bunch of people that watched our conversation last year and were very interested in the topic and your presentation. I think it's partly you're younger. We get a lot of the old, don't tell anybody else who's here, a lot of older folks that come through. But Jonathan Alexandre, he's a Senior Counsel for Governmental Affairs over at Liberty Counsel. He himself is an attorney. He's worked in Massachusetts as an Assistant General Counsel at the Massachusetts Family Institute. That's the one I remembered, great organization. And in particular, Liberty Counsel had a great win. Hal Shurtleff is a friend of ours, and he was the plaintiff, in Shurtleff versus City of Boston, back up in your neck of the woods. So tell our collegians about that case. It's an interesting one.
Yeah, certainly. So Hal Shurtleff, as you all know, a veteran of the U.S. military, was living in Boston at the time. Boston has a practice where you can fly a flag on their third flagpole, and they allowed 284 flags to fly in front of their city hall on their flagpole. As soon as Hal Shurtleff put his application.
Can you fly a Yankees flag?
No, that's a good question. Right?
That's beyond.
But it was within the 284 flags that they would allow. I wonder if we could fly a Jets one as well. But no denials is what the operative fact there is. They didn't deny a single one until Hal Shurtleff placed Christian on his application, and they said for the fact that it's a Christian flag, you're not allowed to fly it. The district court agreed with the city of Boston. Even the First Circuit Court of Appeals said Boston had the right to discriminate against the Christian flag in that regard. Went all the way up to the Supreme Court, and as you mentioned, we won a 9-0 victory in favor of Hal Shurtleff, Camp Constitution. Ultimately, it's a favor for.
Did the flag fly yet?
The flag has not yet flown.
It'll be put in the schedule.
And I think Boston, incidentally, has tried to change their policy in reaction to what's going on. A very similar flag flew, the Bunker Hill flag flew, which is the identical flag, just inverted colors. As soon as the word Christian was placed on the application, they said you can't fly that flag. Thankfully, the court said no to that.
Jonathan Alexandre and Liberty Counsel, it's important, the quote we used and the way we framed our Collegians Summit this year was vigilant, active, brave. And we're taking that from this quote from Patrick Henry: "The battle, sir, is not to the strong alone, it's to the vigilant, the active, and the brave." And Liberty Counsel, tell our folks a little bit about that, because Liberty Counsel is that, earlier I said, the first part of this being vigilant, active, and brave is you got to stand up. And once you're standing up, you got to have some people that'll hold you up too. And that solidarity, Bridget's a friend of mine for a long time. We have that. I mean, it's a solidarity. Liberty Counsel is actively in that fight for Christians. So tell our collegians about Liberty Counsel.
Yes, certainly. So we're a constitutional litigation firm. I think more examples would better characterize what we do for work. So, of course, everyone remembers in 2020 when the COVID shutdowns beginning to really ramp up, they targeted churches. They said that grocery stores could open, liquor stores could open, casinos could open, right, but that churches could not open. And so we were vigilant in that regard and realized that the First Amendment has enshrined and has represented for, since the beginning of our country, the right of individuals to worship the Lord according to the dictates of their heart, and no government official, whether it's the governor of a state or city official or on up to the president, can deny individuals their right to worship. And so we got right into the fight, winning fights all across the country. I think we helped as much as 2,000 churches in over 44 states remain open during these COVID lockdowns. But that transition, right? So churches are able to meet after we put this fight forward, but that transitioned to individuals who now are forced to take these vaccinations in order to keep their job. They have the same religious convictions against taking these vaccines that are chocked full of aborted fetal tissue, both in their development and in their design. So they have religious convictions against it, but they're being fired all across the country from their positions of work. Even the federal government putting down a unconstitutional federal mandate saying that these individuals had to work, even folks in the military. So we represent folks in all 6 branches, including the Space Force of the military, that are being let go, removed, separated from the military based on their religious convictions. So in the past 2 years, our work that has been consistent for 30 years really saw an uptick in a new area where individuals' faith received full assault. because of what they believed and how they wanted to go about their day. And so that's really examples of the type of work that we do, and it's often our clients in our cases that make it more evident the need for what we do.
I'm going to ask Bridget to comment in a moment, but I'd say one of the good things about the persecution, if you can call it that, and I think it is it clarifies conscience, right? It clarifies the protection. What is it you're standing for? Why? It's not just because you have a preference. It's because you have a religious conviction that informs how you understand what's going on, and that's always been respected in America. Not every other place, but for young people, it's very unfashionable to be against the science.
Right.
And most college campuses are making sure that it's unfashionable to be against the science with requirements and all. What's the state of that play in terms of colleges?
Well, I'm very encouraged. Just got off the phone today, as I've done almost every day since early September, with students who are saying, I'm forced to take this vaccine. I believe that it violates my faith. It's used aborted fetal tissue. What do I do? Thankfully, Title IX does have strong religious protections. Schools have been cooperative, other schools have been cooperative, but it's encouraging every time you pick up the phone and you hear a collegiate, someone between the age of 18 to 25, saying, I'm ready to give it all up. And unfortunately, a lot of them have been right at the precipice of graduation, have lost everything because of their faith conviction. And
wow.
that fight is encouraging. Of course, we come alongside them. We arm them with all the material that we need. We put on legal fights. We've won cases all across the country for college students. But the encouragement that you hear is when that voice does not want to back off. And that's the encouragement that this generation certainly has and ought to be echoed.
Yeah. Bridget, any thoughts here?
Well, certainly in the last couple of years, I saw so many everyday people that clearly were having their constitutional rights resisted.
Yeah.
What gives kind of the person who's not naturally bold the courage to actually stand up, especially in cancel culture, because you've interacted with so many? What are some of those traits that you could encourage out from our college kids?
Well, I think one phrase that often comes to mind is, this isn't right, right? I hear that so often. Individuals that realize that they've lived in a free country for most of their lives. Of course, as we know, well, it's eroding, and the Democrat Party is doing everything they can to continue to remove that. But someone says, this isn't right. That doesn't seem right. This doesn't pass the smell test, as it were. And it's at that point that the knowledge of what the Constitution represents, the rights that we all are so familiar with, that's when that needs to start triggering, and then the education needs to come in for an individual to know, this is exactly the steps that I need to take to make that feeling that this isn't right, and that knowledge that this isn't right now turn into something right. And sometimes it takes litigation in order to force the hand of individuals that are oppressing folks that are used to their rights. But just continue to ask the question, what isn't right about the situation? And more often than not, you'll find a government, whether it's a petty officer on up to the president, has done something that is unconstitutional, that stands in the way of rights of Americans to live out and breathe really what they believe.
Are the young people, by the way, it's lcaction.org is the place to go, because it's Liberty Counsel on the side of Liberty Counsel Action, which is the side that's, I think, more active than there's a C3 side. So lcaction.org, you can find out more about what Jonathan's doing. On college campuses, you said you were hopeful, or you felt encouraged. But is the momentum, earlier, was it Congressman Massey, where I used some line, I said, we lost a foot. And we got back an inch.
Yeah.
Right. So but maybe the momentum's our way. Right. That's the question.
I think an encouraging trend. The University of Austin, a newly formed university, just recently opened a fellows program where they said, we're going to allow individuals to really debate the issues and have open academic freedom. They had 88 spots open for individuals to apply. They didn't think they were going to get enough to fill the 88. They got over 44,000 applications from students all over the country saying, get me in that program. I want, yes, academic discipline, but I want the freedom to be able to debate these difficult issues from whatever spectrum or position that I come from. So the encouragement is certainly there, and we are seeing groundswells across the country of young students standing up for truth.
When the left was winning by judicial fiat, say at the Supreme Court until a couple years ago, they were all happy to say the Supreme Court's the ultimate law of the land and all. It was really wise. It was serious. Roe v. Wade, Obergefell, all these things. Suddenly, when there's a majority that's more conservative, and we're in the cusp of Dobbs' decision, whatever it will be, the left and the media is willing to run down the institution. that's got to be a challenge, right?
In a literal sense, of course, a figurative sense is they're saying they want to pack the court, which just means they want to expand the court, add a number of justices. FDR tried to do that a number of years back.
Right.
There's great amendments actually going through the House in order to stop that. But in a literal sense as well, right? The fact that they're protesting in front of a judge's and justice's house, the fact that they're this man being arrested with a Glock and with body armor attempting to assassinate the justice, there is an assault against our judiciary, and the left has tried to bury that story. They've tried to ignore that story. Chuck Schumer, you'll remember, as Caldwell standing out in front of the Supreme Court, says you won't be able to withstand the whirlwind that's coming against you justices if you don't rule essentially in our favor. So certainly the left has their eyes on the judiciary. Strong credit to Donald Trump and to the Senate that we're able to nominate and then confirm so many justices to the court so that we do have a judiciary. I will just say, in general, if we are waiting for SCOTUS, and they've done great things.
Yeah, I agree with you.
If we're waiting for SCOTUS to be the one backstop in order to secure our rights, then we've already lost the fight.
I agree.
That comes every time, as we mentioned, someone stands up and says this isn't right and then follows through. And that's the conviction and the boldness that we need to see from this culture.
I agree. I think that's very important what you said. Too often, and for our college students, I always often think of the college students who come and say, I don't remember, not Reagan. I mean, they don't, Reagan, forget it. They don't even remember Obama's first election because they're so young, right? So but for young people, it wasn't always, and it's not preferable that the courts solve all our problems. It's much more effective. In fact, the late Justice Antonin Scalia, rest his soul, often would say, Roe v. Wade, once it's overturned, it's a different argument about whether life should be protected in the Constitution. We all have an opinion, but for a while it's going to go back to the states where there should be lots of debate and there's going to be lots of challenges. But you shouldn't wait around for black-robed folks to solve all your problems. Any last questions for Jonathan?
Thank you for what you're doing.
Yeah.
I know that sometimes people get backed into a corner like we're talking about and feel hopeless, and I know people personally that you guys have helped, so just thank you for the work.
Yeah.
Keep on doing it.
Yeah, Jonathan Alexander, Liberty Counsel Action, lcaction.org. He's on Twitter at lcaction. John A. Thank you. Thanks for coming back, and we'll see if the coverage of your segment beats
I was
Bridget.
gonna say,
This will be a big
just
competition.
don't beat my.
This is a woman you don't want to mess with. So.
I think it was follow a Super Bowl. That
was good. That was good.
You did all right. You did all right.
All right, we'll be right back, everybody. The 29th Phyllis Schlafly Collegians Summit. Back in a minute.